So welcome everyone to this meeting of Cheltenham Borough Council's Cabinet. My name is Councillor Rowena Hay and I'm leader of the council. We don't have any members of the public watching the live stream of the meeting on the council's YouTube channel, but to those watching on YouTube channel, the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. We don't have any members of the public present. We do have CCTV running around in the gallery and in the foyer. And that we're not expecting a fire alarm test. So should that happen, everybody please go to the relevant places and you can see the exit routes here. Can I ask any members, I've got apologies received from Councillor Collins tonight, so I will present his report and on the decision that he took when we get there. Declarations of interest. Could I ask any member if they've got any declarations of interest that they wish to declare at this point? No, thank you very much. So we then turn to minutes of the last meeting, which is on page 5 to 18. Is there any comments that anybody wants to make on those, on the previous minutes? No, I can't see any hands. So you're happy for me to, if I could see a show of hands that you're happy for me to sign those minutes? From anybody who was here? Shall I try that again? Could I ask Cabinet to show a show of hands if you approve the minutes, please? Richard, you were not here at that meeting, so thank you for that. Actually, I'll do that while I think on. That leads us on to agenda item. Bear with me. So public and member questions. We did have a public question from Mr. Gary Clark, which has had a response. He's not here, so there is no supplementary question to be asked tonight, and we don't have any member questions. And that we have nothing referred from council, overview and scrutiny, or any of the other committees to us at today's meeting. We do have, so that takes us into the section 5, which is reports from various members tonight. But I would just point out that in the first agenda item, which is the award of a rent support grant to the voluntary sector, is that the appendices are actually are confidential. So if members want to actually discuss that in any detail, we need to go into a closed session to do that. But as we all have access to modern.gov and to get at those beforehand, hopefully members will have asked any questions that were relevant to them within that appendices of Councillor Jeffries previously. So on that note, I will hand over to Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, the rent support grant, this helps the council support local community and charity groups, I'm sure you're all aware. These groups play an important role in making Cheltenham a better place to live and to work, as again, I'm sure you're all aware. We encourage these groups to become more independent and less dependent on council funding where possible. And to get a rent support grant, groups must show how they help in the 4 key areas, which align with our priorities. That's caring for the environment, boosting the local economy and culture, building safe and strong communities, and improving people's health and well-being. And the more they help in these areas, the more rent support they get. This report details the application from the Campton Rovers Football Club in Burrows-Field, or at Burrows-Field, and the Pavilion. The Campton Rovers is an FC registered charity which maintains fields, sport pitches, and the Pavilion, which hosts a cafe. The club makes a strong case with the evidence of its contribution to all of the themes assessed against it, particularly in terms of protecting and enhancing the environment and enabling people to live in a safe and strong community. The club has over 600 members, 49 youth teams, and strong links with the local community. And I know it's something that this council has worked collaboratively with and to support them. The recommendations are laid out, but I'm happy to take any non-confidential questions. Equally, happy to take any confidential questions if needed. Thank you, Leader.
Any member wish to speak on this agenda item? I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my phone. Other than the fact I dropped it, it was all on silent. It's still not ringing out, but has any member got any questions on this? So no questions. Anybody got any comments they'd like to make? Councillor Atherstone and then Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just reading through it just really made me realise, especially with the very, very sort of difficult times we've got financially in terms of balancing budgets and trying to make sure that we've got money to go around, that we're still able to support our really important voluntary and community sector so that they can continue to do the great work in the various communities they serve. So it's really pleasing that we can still do this. Thank you.
Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously, I really, really support this. I think it's a really good thing to be doing. I went to Leckhampton Road, well, I've been there multiple times, but in my previous portfolio, I went there with Paul and we were planting trees around the borders with the county council and with our parks and gardens teams, and that was a really brilliant thing. And it shows how one of the examples of how they're working with us for a lot of our kind of corporate plan and the environment and things like that. But mostly the amount of sporting opportunity they provide as a club, I think, is incredible, to be honest. And they've got so many teams of different ages. They've got girls teams and stuff as well, which is really important at the moment when the sport is growing so much with the Lionesses wins. They're also very involved in working with us and with my kind of sporting hat on, with our teams trying to help us deliver more sporting opportunities across the town and seeing what opportunities there are. So it's really good that we're working with them as much as we can, because I think Mark and the team at Leckhampton Rovers do a really good job, and I welcome this. Thank you.
I was going to say what I'd like to say is it's not just specifically about this particular application for a grant, which, yes, is something that I think we should be really proud of what we took that decision. I'm trying to think of when we did it, but it must have been about 2016 that we took, or it might have been before then, that we took the decision to actually, give this opportunity to those organisations that actually look after our buildings, as well as help deliver stuff that we can't necessarily do. But financially, to charge market rents they wouldn't happen. So actually subsidising that by these rental voluntary sector grants is something I'm really proud that we as this administration actually introduced. I know it doesn't necessarily go down financially very well because it's quite a lot of money ultimately, but our communities would be so much poorer and weaker without those facilities being able to be used by those voluntary sectors. I've prompted Councillor Baker to say something. I'll come back to you, Councillor Jeffries, in a moment.
Well, at the risk of some duplication, but I think we all recognise the massive input into our town by friends groups and groups like our local football clubs, Leckhampton, Charlton Rovers, all of these. They provide so much opportunity for children of all age groups and disability groups in our town. And the thing about Leckhampton Rovers is they've taken on a huge project, a massive project, which they're managing. So I think it's brilliant that we are able to continue to support these volunteers in all that they do. We've got a playing pitch strategy. Some of our playing fields are in pretty poor condition, but Leckhampton Rovers, we've got the grants from the FA and other places. They've had to put an awful lot of water onto those pitches last summer, which is one of the reasons they've having a bit of a struggle. But without that, all that investment in those pitches would have been wasted. So it's fabulous that we can support them and support their requests. So thank you.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. And I'm welcome to hear all the comments from everybody, and clearly I mirror those, and when we talk about our communities. But it is one of those policies, and dare I say it, and I'll probably never say this again, possibly, it's not all about the money. This is about the outcomes in our communities, effectively. So I welcome their colleagues' support and their comments. Thank you, Leader.
So can I see a show of hands to approve these? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the next report of this evening is the Nature Recovery Supplementary Planning Document, SPD, which is actually the report of Councillor Collins, who's not here, but he has supplied me with an intro for tonight's briefing to introduce the report. So I will just read that to you. You will have to bear with me if there are questions that people have on that. I won't necessarily have the detail that Mike had, but I'm sure we can make a note of it and come back with any answers that people might have to those questions at a later date. So it's my pleasure to present this consultation document. If Cabinet agrees to its publication tonight, it will signal the beginning of a 4-week public consultation exercise, which will go live as soon as possible. This is a new draft nature recovery supplementary planning document, and it will give the public the opportunity to play a part in this vitally important process. The guidance sets out how future development in Cheltenham can support and improve the natural environment. Cheltenham already has a wide range of green spaces, as we've actually just been talking about, including nature reserves, parks and important wildlife areas. And this SPD offers guidance on how new buildings and developments can help connect and improve local green spaces, wildlife habitats and the overall health of the nature in Cheltenham. Residents, developers and community groups can now share their views on that draft SPD, which launches hopefully next week. The consultation will be available on the Council's website. So this draft guidance sets out how we can build in a way that supports wildlife, protects green spaces and help nature thrive across Cheltenham. So we're really keen to hear from residents, developers and community groups so we can shape a final document that works for everyone and makes a real difference. Hopefully it really will be a win-win opportunity for us all. So this work very much supports the policies in our development plan and links to the emerging Gloucestershire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which identifies the best places to restore nature and the most important actions to take. And hopefully Cabinet colleagues will be able to support both the recommendations contained in this consultation document. I'm sure that you've all been able to read it in full. However, I just wanted to say that it is fully in line with our corporate plan priorities and aligns with the following actions. We will drive increased biodiversity in our borough and fully utilise our planning system to encourage developers to enhance our natural environment, mitigating the impact of new buildings. We will fulfil our diversity net gain, otherwise known as BNG obligations, within the planning system. In addition, I think it's important to draw out these important points which are contained within that document. Nature recovery refers to the process of restoring and revitalising ecosystems that have been degraded or lost due to human activity, climate change or other factors. It involves regenerating natural habitats, creating new ones as well as protecting them, and the species that they support from degradation. The goal is to create healthier, more resilient environments that can support a wider variety of species on a large scale. And nature recovery is important for a number of reasons, which are set out in the SPD, including biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, ecosystem services, resilience to natural disasters, human well-being and sustainability. So, as I said at the beginning, I hope that you will all be able to support the introduction of this important public consultation document. And I think it's important to stress, just as the last word from me reading this out from Mike, is that this is the consultation process. This isn't the definitive document. I will hand over to members now to any questions. Questions? Councillor Pinniger, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So I've read the whole document and I would echo the sentiment in the introduction that you gave us there. It was when I got to my team's contribution, which is the climate impact assessment. And I read the following. It said, research suggests that 10% biodiversity net gain is a minimum to prevent further decrease. So I felt that perhaps that should be in the introduction. I appreciate it's going out to consultation. So the question is, can that be included on the website as part of the introduction? That this is the minimum, because we don't want to let developers off the hook. We know that some will try to get out of these measures. That's the question. Can we put that information front and centre somewhere?
Any other member got a question? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I appreciate you might not have the answer straight away, but I have a question around the habitat banks, whether there is potential scope to identify areas within the Borough Council boundaries that we could direct developers to, should they need to choose that as their option for biodiversity net gain.
So I think in terms of the questions, I will have to come back to you with the answers on those. I don't think unless Tracy, actually I was going to look to Tracy. I sort of did, but she didn't move. So I thought, oh, okay. So Tracy, if you've got the answers, amazing.
There we go, success. It's the end of a long day. So, Councillor Pinniger, yeah, I can't see a problem with introducing that suggestion, so I'll take that away and have a conversation with the author of the document. But I think we can probably put some more positive words in around that. So happy to take that away and pick that up. In terms of the habitat banks, that's a really interesting question, because as a council, we've actually investigated previously whether, for example, Cheltenham land holdings could be utilised as potential habitat banks. The challenge with it is the responsibilities aren't just for the next 5, 10, 15 years. They are very long term. And actually the implications in terms of the administration of that is significant, and also the monitoring that's related to it. So what we will always look to do is to do local first. So we're working with the Gloucestershire Nature Partnership, who are looking at potential habitat banks and what that looks like. So we will always look at local first and then go wider than that. And as you see from the report, the government enables credits to be allocated at a more national level. But actually all you're doing is transporting that benefit elsewhere. So wherever possible, we will always look for local first, but not necessarily within the borough itself.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for that. Is there any member that would like to comment on this document? Councillor Pinniger.
Hi. Yeah, I'm concerned that my comment might come across as overly negative. I think that developers being neutral to the environment is actually progress that hasn't been made for the 7,000 years since we first put a spade in the ground and built something, right, since agriculture took over. So it is actually really positive. And I think that with the Parks team and Ubico and all of the other efforts that we're making to encourage biodiversity and nature, this is a good step forward. I'm just concerned that we don't want people to think that this is adding 10%, so I'll probably add 5%, or maybe I can get away with 2%. I need it to be, we need to add the 10% because that is neutrality. So I want that very clear.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I'm really proud actually of the work that this authority does with its supplementary planning documents. We had one a few years ago now, Tracy, on climate emergency. And that has been such a positive document, which is actually really well received across the whole sector. And I think in terms of planning and applicants and developers, having that tick box and those questions, it really does concentrate and focus their minds. And I think that has been a really positive tool. And I speak as a former member of the planning committee, and reading those reports and seeing the input and the changes that have been made to applications as a consequence. And it is only a guidance, but so much of it is taken on board. So I think it's a huge credit to Tracy and her team that we've come up with this document now. I don't think this is a legal requirement to do this. I think we've decided to do it as it's the right thing to do. So I think it's an excellent document. And again, it will really concentrate the mind of applicants, developers, looking through that checklist, what they've done, what they haven't done. And they don't have to do it, but it's really going to help their case with councillors on the planning committee, I think, and others in getting their applications positively received. So well done on all the work that's gone into that. I think the consultation, we need to go as wide as possible, parish councils and so on. But I think it's a great document and will hold us in good stead. And as ever, Cheltenham Borough seems to lead the way on this. And I can see other documents, other councils copying and picking up on this. So thank you very much.
Is there any, Councillor Aston?
Yeah, I would just like to second what Councillor Baker's just said. And the climate SPD has really done us well over the last couple of years. And I'm really looking forward to the fruits of this SPD and also looking forward to the consultation responses. Yeah, I think it's quite worrying when you read the number of endangered species, the species that are already extinct, and how actually we can really benefit as a town with implementing net gain and improving our nature and the natural habitat. So, yeah, zoom forward a couple of years, hopefully Cheltenham will be that much better.
I can't see any other member indicating to speak, so could I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you, that's unanimous. So our next agenda item today is the annual budget setting strategy process and timetable, and that's the report of Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to present the budget strategy process and timetable 2026-27 report for your consideration. I'm sure colleagues are getting used to this sort of process now. The document outlines the strategic approach and key milestones for developing the Council's budget and council tax proposals for the year ahead. It reaffirms our commitment to financial sustainability, delivering our corporate priorities and meaningful public engagement. The report also notes the current forecast overspend of £295,000 in 25-26, underlining the need to continually identify savings and efficiencies while protecting frontline services. It also sets out the risks of relying too heavily on reserves to balance our budget. Importantly, the report reflects the provisional local government's financial settlement expected in late December, with final confirmation likely in January next year. This will influence the shaping of our interim and final budget proposals. Sadly, as ever, government always leaves these decisions and information for us far too late. They have, however, signalled a potential 3-year settlement, and I hope they do follow through with those words. As always, the success of the budget setting process depends on strong collaboration across Cabinet and with officers across the Council. And I encourage all colleagues to engage early with the timetable and contribute ideas and feedback within their individual portfolios as we work together to deliver a balanced and resilient budget for Cheltenham. I'm happy to take any questions, Leader. Thank you.
Has any member got any questions for Councillor Jeffreys? Does any member wish to comment on this report? No, fair enough, because it actually is, we do have to do this legally to say what we're doing, when we're doing it, but it comes around at this time every year. So if I could just see a show of hands from members to approve that. Thank you very much. That leads us now on to the briefing session from members. So if I start with Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, firstly, I just wanted to send some thanks to Synam, who gave me a very generous invitation to their networking event before Nick Clegg's talk at the Cheltenham Literature Festival. There is quite simply no easier way to lead me to anywhere. So that was a fantastic invite. It was really good to speak to a whole bunch of different SMEs and startup companies and people working within kind of the technology sector, either building in Gloucestershire and in Cheltenham now, and businesses that were moving to Cheltenham because of just how exciting the Golden Valley is and this huge opportunity to be part of something really, really cool. I think it came up time and time again when I was speaking to people saying, oh, we've moved over here 2 weeks ago, last month, or we're moving at the end of the year because we really see an opportunity here to build in Cheltenham over other parts of the country. So that was fantastic. Also some absolutely glowing reviews from everybody there for our first ever Tech Week. So thanks to Cynam for all their fantastic work in making that happen. It was also great to visit our new homes at Regent's Village. I got into politics to build more houses. It does feel really good to step into homes that have just been fully finished. You can see they're just finishing the plastering off. It was fantastic stepping in there. 10 are already ready for residents to move in, with basically everything done by Christmas on the current timescales, which feels incredible. The speed these houses are going up at, but also the quality to which they've been built. It was good to go for a nose round somebody's house before they moved in to see everything from the solar panels and the EV charging, the heat pumps, but also all the changes we've made to the interior of the properties, because we could have just bought something off the shelf as it's built as standard, but we made some really important changes to make these properties more accessible, sort of level access, wider internal corridors, wider doors, reinforced walls, so people who need grab bars and additional assistive technology can put those things into the property without us having to rip anything out later on. It really was a great investment, and I'm really looking forward to welcoming lots of new residents to their homes. Also, those who are around our next scheme in Swindon, they are just getting their newsletters coming through. They'll have their second, not Swindon the town, we're saying Swindon Road. The new properties, they'll be having their second newsletter very soon, just to let them know how the scheme's going. We've finally aligned all the very complicated processes you have to go through, about utilities being booked in on the right dates. So those homes will be off to a fantastic start, and I look forward to going to the groundbreaking very soon.
Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Leader. Similar to Councillor Lewis's first update with regards to the Literature Festival, I'd like to say thanks to Cheltenham Festivals for inviting our No Child Left Behind team. We went to their huddle space, which was a little bit scary because it was actually part of the eating area. I want to thank our partners who were brave to join us on the stand and their young people. So we had the Children's Society, the Rock and Springbank Community Resource Centre, just talking about the work that we've been doing this year as part of our Youth Voice activity and giving young people actually a voice. I mean, I was scared, so I can see that they were super, super brave. And some really quite tough subjects were discussed in terms of the issue that we have in schools with around online bullying and online harm. So, but yeah, I was really proud of the young people. And afterwards, I was invited to the NCLB workshops that were just across from the speaking space. And I was supported in helping to make a bracelet. And I love bracelets, so I was really grateful for that. So thanks.
Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. Well, plenty going on as always. I feel I've just taken over from Martin and doing very long speeches at Cabinet of all the things that are happening. But having, I think, the longest Cabinet title in the world, I think does include a lot of things. So just after our last Cabinet meeting, I attended the Everyman's launch of their Grove Street appeal, where Tweedy the Clown got to smash down some walls in their new Grove Street Community Centre, which is nerve-wracking, but really positive. And that kind of building, they're looking to open that in spring next year. And so they're currently doing a £1 million appeal. So if anyone can donate to that, that'd be amazing, because it's going to serve as their kind of creative arts education and community centre, which is, I think, really welcomed, especially where it is. I think it's outreaching into the community more so, and hopefully will provide quite an accessible way in to arts for people. Shortly after that, I then spoke at the launch of the Wilson's new exhibition, Material Worlds, which is in partnership with the Hayward Gallery, and it's using a lot of kind of everyday objects and creating art out of them. And it's another example of where, as a town, Cheltenham punches way above its weight in terms of culture and arts and what we can bring here. And as always, it's free, so I'd recommend people go out and enjoy that. And it's a real testament to the work Lisa and her team do there, so I just wanted to shout them out on that. We also obviously had the Lions at Large, which is now over, but it was, excuse the pun, a roaring success, and it helped bring significant footfall to both Cheltenham and Gloucester during its tenure of the trail itself, which is obviously great for our businesses at times where they need as much support as they can get. But importantly, it's raised £370,000 for the Big Space Cancer Appeal. So obviously a big thank you to Cheltenham Bid and our team at Visit Cheltenham for supporting that and helping the Cheltenham and Gloucester Hospitals charity make that work. I think it's a really brilliant thing, and hopefully we'll see more animals on our streets in the future. Speaking of Visit Cheltenham, I attended the Marketing Cheltenham meeting at Wadham Road this time, where they kind of get the member businesses together to share insight and collaborate between themselves. And as part of this, there was a showcase of the new Visit Cheltenham website, which has the top search result whenever you're looking for any events in Cheltenham. It's really good to kind of go through that with the businesses that are going to be involved on that and show them all the new ways. It's much easier for them to populate it with their events. I know before I was even a councillor, if I was looking up what events are on in Cheltenham, it would always be Visit Cheltenham that would come up, which is very positive. So hopefully the new website will continue to deliver that. Speaking of events, the Litfest has just finished, which this year had over 400 events at it. I think it's obviously safe to say that Cheltenham festivals are essential to our festival town. So I think it's really welcome that the Litfest continues to do so well. During this, I attended a show in the Gardens Gallery as well, which was a community show about kind of mythologies and art, and it was really interesting to attend that. And then outside of culture and things like that, last week I attended a meeting with GCC and our offices about the High Street and the Promenade and developing a better vision and planning for the future for our town. I think it's really important that we work together, and then as and when possible and relevant, we bring in all the different organisations that should be consulted with and spoken to improve our town centre and our public realm. I think it's really important for our businesses. It's really important to how we feel about our town. So hopefully the work we're doing together will get us back on track and make us the town we should be publicly. And I'm sure you'll have more to say about it, but I do want to highlight, obviously, the Cheltenham Bid have their ballot at the moment, and I hope businesses will support them in that. It's really important. They do a lot of work, as mentioned with Lions at Large, plenty of different things they've been doing in our town, and we work really well with them, and I hope that continues. And the last thing I'll say, it's not a thing I've done, but it's a thing to look out for, and it's early to say this, and it's not even Halloween yet. But it's always good to book early for these things. That obviously both the Everyman and the Playhouse will have their pantomimes this year, so book your tickets for their pantos. But also on the 21st of November, we'll see the return of our wonderful ice rink. So I hope everyone will get their skates on and enjoy that if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. Let me follow up on that with, because I have a number of things to report on. And the first one I'd like to look at is, you may remember our Citizen of Honour, David Bath. I visited him last week, and he is in the process of collecting selection boxes and funding for our poorest children. And last year, I think he got just under 900. He's already well on the way to that now. And I'm just thinking of how children will get selection boxes from him that they would never have had. And so, Dave, I don't know if you're watching, but thank you for that. St Peter's and the Moors, the new hub there, starts work on the 2nd of November. So work will start on ground analysis then, and we are anticipating that the new premises will be completed by the end of March, beginning of April. We have been talking about veterans housing and how we can actually help with that. And we have another meeting in relation to that tomorrow. And can I thank Councillor Harvey for his interest and involvement in that. I think it's really good, really useful. An interesting meeting took place about 10 days ago where European cities were invited to come to meet in relation to housing across Europe, because all of us are having the same problems. Not enough, too expensive, getting the cash to build them and making sure that actually environmentally they're good. And so a task group has been formed of European cities. I've been asked to join that, which I have. It won't cost the council any money, let me say that to you, for me to attend meetings or to do some work. But I think that could be extremely useful, particularly because I've suggested a conference where we can actually invite banks such as the European Investment Bank and other international banks to see how they can actually do the work that needs to be done. And last week, I also attended a conference with the Housing Ombudsman in Leeds. And that was extremely interesting. It was for local authority housing members who are responsible for complaints and also for social housing complaints members. And we met and I asked a couple of questions, one of which was in relation to what is going to happen in the private sector tenants' complaints, which are going to come to local authorities. And the Ombudsman said that actually, until the secondary legislation goes through, they don't know what is likely to happen. So until that happens, we're actually, in some respects, working in the dark. And so some of the work that we'll be doing, I hope, will be with others, so that we can actually come together and look at the questions we need to ask, the way we need to behave, the way we need to do things, so that we can actually handle those properly. And the other interesting thing about the conference was the Ombudsman went through the complaints process, and we had the opportunity to see how it works and also to hear from them what they think is really good and what we need to concentrate on. And the big word to come out of that was challenge, because when reports come to us, they want us to challenge, to make sure things are being done properly. And it was great to be able to say, well, of course, in Cheltenham, that's the norm. It's not something that is done outside of the box. This is the norm. If something comes to committee or comes to us, then we are there and questions are asked. And I think for many in that room, that wasn't actually the way things were done. So I was very pleased that we actually are in that process, that we do this, and that members here, and indeed our tenants and our leaseholders, have the right to ask those questions at committee. So thank you. It's been a very interesting couple of weeks, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few things from me. Mike Collins and myself attended a briefing with officers about our new Cheltenham tree strategy, which is another brilliant piece of work by officers, looking at how we manage our trees in our town going forward in terms of protecting our hundreds, thousands of trees that we have in our town, many of them which are veteran and many which are TPO'd, and also how we plant new trees. And Cheltenham is often regarded as a town within a park, and for many of us living in this part of town, it is. But for many parts of our town, they are really devoid of trees and really devoid of tree canopy. And so it is a real, the document's really looking at how we can address that imbalance with more tree planting in our estates and towards the west of the town, where there is a real shortage of trees. And trees are such a valuable commodity, and we're so lucky to have what we have. But in terms of mental health, in terms of shade, in terms of biodiversity, all those things, they are so important. So this is a really important document which will be coming out shortly and will be going for consultation. And we also talked about our evolving policy on SANGS, otherwise known as Suitable Alternative Natural Green Space. And that's a really exciting document, actually. And this is where planning applications will have to make a contribution towards SANGS, which are trying to generate alternative areas for people who would otherwise go to perhaps the beech woods, which are under a lot of pressure. So it's how we can use that money from those planning applications to make some of our areas in Cheltenham more attractive and take the pressure off. And actually, it's a really good opportunity to invest in some of our parks, and some of the schemes I've seen, will be very, very well received indeed. In terms of recycling, we continue to look at, work towards expanding curbside recycling, as we talked about before, to include flexi plastics and Tetra Paks. Really sure now that we will be running that out in the new year. Just one or two things to finalise on that. Conversations continue in a very positive way with GCC on the future of the HRC. It's not a straightforward thing, but I think we have very much some common goals on that. So that continues to we continue to talk about that in a very positive way. So I think that's probably all I have for now. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Pinniger.
Thank you, Leader. From my side, we had another one of the 6 each year Climate Leadership Gloucestershire meetings. This time we were reviewing the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, which they took our comments, and it will be ready soon, and we can use that to provide evidence for further action on the climate. And it is quite scary reading. So that should be coming in the next few months. The other thing was the local area energy plan, which is planning how we're going to get electricity primarily, how the grid's going to be managed now that we've got this, I think is it called Great British Energy, the new organisation. It's set up a load of new roles. So we're planning how electricity is going to get to businesses and houses through to 2040, 2050. So that was really interesting, and we've got those documents coming through soon. Today, actually, during the first half of this meeting, we had a business summit, our first collaboration with all our business partners at the Doubletree by the Hilton by the Doubletree. I think it's the first way around. And so I'm looking forward to finding out how that went. I couldn't attend myself because I was here. We've also, we're recruiting a new retrofit officer, not a new retrofit, a new resident engagement officer. And we've now, but I'm still attending events that they booked for me. So I'm still doing resident engagement for insulation and heat pumps and those kinds of technologies, low carbon technologies. So I spoke at Energy Smart on the 4th of October, something set up by our partner Ferb now. There were about 70 attendees, and I took part in a panel, and it was all very positive. And this is people who are able to pay for their retrofits, so we don't have to do them. Speaking of which, we're now we're finishing off the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund Wave 2.1 of funding, insulating council houses. And we've signed the grant funding for Wave 3, which is somewhere, I think it's £3.1 million to try to bring all of our housing stock up to EPC C or better. I went on a tour of Prestbury and a tour of Warden Hill to look at the SUD schemes and all the flooding prevention. And we're talking now about potential schemes in St Mark's, because the water runs from Lansdowne, down Malvern Road, across the railway, through St Mark's, through Hester's Way and into Springbank, and we have various bits of flooding happening along there. So we're looking where we could put SUD schemes to prevent that happening if we have another event like September 2024. As always, we're looking for volunteer flood wardens, always looking for volunteer flood wardens. And one final thing on that is the emergency planning team have some funding now to get some new flood protection equipment, because previously we couldn't do much to help residents. So our emergency team are also making better preparations, I guess you could say. Final thing, volunteers are now, this year, cleared 4 kilometres of Himalayan balsam, which is an invasive species from the Chelt. And that's the last clearance of the season, because after this it will drop seeds. And they're starting to see results, lasting results, because there was less Himalayan balsam this year than there has been in previous years. So we'll keep that going, and eventually we might be free of it or down to a lower level. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Invariably, always a... Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. Invariably, always a difficult topic to brief when it comes to property, because it's mostly confidential. there's all kinds of negotiations going on with across the portfolio, whether it be lease negotiations or all kinds of conversations. And equally, when it comes to the budget was set last year, and we all know where those finances are. So I've got nothing specific at this time, Leader. Thank you.
That was a little preamble of saying I've got nothing to say. I've actually got a few bits that I really would just like to mention. And earlier today, we were talking about the importance of our communities. And I and my colleague, Councillor Lewis, went to visit one of our new organisations that's taken over on a lease, Whaddon, so the resource centre in Clyde Crescent. And that is Whaddon United. We met with the treasurer from there, who showed us what they'd done, and they are now going to apply for a rent support grant. But it's Whaddon United have been going since the 70s, and they've never had their own clubhouse. So they're really excited that we've been able to do that and provide them with a place of their own. And through that, because it's a place of their own, as an example, Councillor Baker mentioned earlier that actually, you know, some of our pitches are not in brilliant condition, but because they've got a clubhouse, because they've got, and they've got three teams, and what they can do with the clubhouse actively is now apply to the football association to actually help them improve the pitch quality there. So without us facilitating that, they would not be able to do that. So it's one of those rules, isn't it, that you do that because you can actually affect change and make something happen. That's certainly why I do what I do. I'd also like to say that I had an invitation again. I had an invitation on Saturday to go and celebrate 50 years of the Oriel Choir. Some of you may not. And what they do is they do an awful lot to raise money, not just for churches, but for communities. And 50 years of that concert was and because you can't have a nicer venue, can you, for choral and music than the Pump Room. So that was a thoroughly enjoyable evening. And they actually they've got music that's written for them by composers, and they had a Jubilee concert piece that was written specially for them that was absolutely fabulous. I go from that to I was asked to do the closing speech at the our first Tech Cyber Week closing on Friday. And it's fascinating to have watched Cynam come from being sort of relatively small, relatively Cheltenham focused, to the fact that in the last 2 years, they've gone from 5,000 memberships to over 7,000 memberships. And actually reaching, when I went to that and we were just doing the bit of networking and talking before the start of the meeting, it's like, gosh, he's come all the way from Bedford as a small business to hear what's happening in Cheltenham. He didn't come to the Literature Festival. He came because of that particular event and what they were doing. So, and I think a massive, massive congratulations to Holly and her team for actually bringing that off. It was incredibly well attended. So that was a pleasure to just listen and see what opportunities there are coming forward in that cyber tech and security world. And then I also went to the Business Improvement District, as Councillor Telford said, is, the ballots rapidly coming to an end. We can't deliver half of what we do without a bid area. So any businesses that haven't voted, and any businesses that that you think, well, I'll just ask the question, have they voted? Please don't hesitate to do so. Because, again, I think there's massive thanks I want to put out to the entire bid board, because we're all volunteers who sit on that board. Most of them have got a business of one form or another that they are running locally in this town. So they care passionately about what they want to continue to be able to do that offer. So, and they held a networking event at the Bottle of Sauce, which was really well attended. And because the bid have decided to extend their area, that brought in new people who have got smaller businesses. So there was a Pilates studio, as an example, that is in Gloucester Place. In fact, it's not Gloucester Places, but it's opposite Williams Cycles. So sort of back of our car park there. And she knew nothing about the bid. So it was absolutely fascinating talking to her, telling her, and she thought, right, you know, I'm now in that area, I'll get involved. And it's, you know, those things are really important, aren't they? And that doesn't include the day job, but those are the bits I wanted to highlight. So that's me done. We now move on to decisions by cabinet members since the last meeting that we had, and the first one actually, although it was published, it has subsequently been withdrawn, so that one's not for discussion tonight. There's two that Councillor Atherton has made, so perhaps you'd like to take both of those, Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I made a decision, first of all, to note the new legislation that requires anyone that owns a primate to have a licence, and to manage that licensing process, we have to introduce fees. So I've made a decision to set those fees. And actually, the first question I asked, and probably what lots of people are going to ask, is, you know, how many do we have in Cheltenham? And that I don't actually know. But actually, if we have this licensing process, then that is going to definitely answer that question. The other decision I made was to adopt the County Council's new domestic abuse strategy, 2025 to 2028. It is very thorough and has strong sort of guidelines for how the district councils in the county can actually help them to deliver on our collective targets, so that we can provide the right support and guidance where it's needed. And that has all been informed via the needs assessment. So our policy, which is coming forward in the next couple of months, it will definitely look to support their strategy.
Thank you. And then there was a decision that I took as leader on the 3rd of October that was under our protocol of the fact that there were no other nominations that came forward for two replacements on our outside bodies. So I made the decision to appoint Martin Hallwood to Folk, and for Councillor Doby to become a Lido trustee. And the final decision tonight that I'll report on is that Councillor Collins took a decision, and that was to agree to enter into a contract with recruitment consultancy Carrington West to supply of services of a shared planning officer manager, covering, and this actually, I think it's important to say, this is shared between three of us, and it's actually to support the strategic local plan making. And actually, we do have an officer that's already started. We had our first meeting, I think it's a week into the job, and we had our first meeting as a joint advisory group on that yesterday. So he's obviously dived straight in there. So that's it in terms of all the decisions tonight, and that's going to conclude the public part of the meeting. We do have to go into exempt businesses, and we only do this reluctantly. But when we're dealing with commercially sensitive issues, we don't have a choice, and we are legally bound quite often to have to go into private session. I think the important thing is that at the end of the day, at some point, when everything's concluded, all of those discussions, all of those minutes can become public. But until that time, as the deal is done and sealed, we have to stay exempt. So I do need to ask the public to leave. Thank you, Carmelo. I need to read the statement before I say please.
Agenda item 10 is to dispose of municipal offices. Presumably that's what's going to be debated. Once a decision is made later on, can that be made public? Because obviously you don't want to discuss financials, but obviously it's on the agenda. that's what you're discussing. Is there a pressure for the to check the sort of notification?
Sorry? Yeah. Camilla, if you want to hang around, then I'm happy to come and talk to you. Actually, telling you to hang around is not very polite, is it? But if you want to wait, I'm very happy to come and talk to you. But
I'll wait in the corridor.
we'll find a seat in one of the committee rooms because they're all empty, Carmelo. I need to read this out in full, that the Cabinet is recommended to approve the following resolution, that in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, and it is likely that in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 5. Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, namely, paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Paragraph 5, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. So could I see a show of hands, please, to do that? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. I'll just wait a few seconds for